Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Victory Garden series here at Bachman's. So glad that you could join us today. It's raining a little bit, but we are outside in the yard here at Bachman's, and we put our tents up because we're going to garden rain or shine. So I'm glad that you all could join us. I'm Susie Bachman West. And please, react to what we're doing through the emojis. Text us where you're from, and if you have any questions, just put them in the comments, and we'll answer them as we go along. So we kind of got past our cold spurt these last few days, and now it's warming up, and we've told you how to build a victory garden. We want to make it really easy for you. Remember, your victory garden should be manageable yet abundant. We talked about starting small, learning the basics, and going from there. And victory gardens are great for all ages. So last week we talked about the different methods of the victory garden. We talked about traditional row gardening, and as well as square foot gardening as well. So on the square foot gardening, if you remember from last week, you calculate based on how big your raised bed is, and you grid it off into 1 foot by 1 foot squares. So if you're here, we're 2 feet by 4 feet, so we have eight squares for our victory garden and our raised bed. So today we really want to talk about planting our victory garden. Hopefully you all thought about things that you would want to plant in your garden over the past week. So now we're ready to get dirty and dig in the dirt. So let's talk about planting and things that we should consider, knowing now what we're going to plant and how we should lay out what we plant. So the things that you would want to consider is you want to plant the tall veggies. So tall veggies, like if you're going to plant sweet corn, or if you had pole beans or something like that. In your, whether it's a garden in the ground, a row garden, or in a raised bed, you want those taller items to be planted on the north side, so they don't shade some of your smaller things that you have planted. And the other thing to consider in your layout is most things that you'll plant, your veggies and herbs, are annuals, but there are some that are perennials too, such as strawberries, rhubarb, or asparagus. And so those, you would have them be in a permanent location, which is very easy. In a in-ground bed, you can permanently have them. They won't do as well. They wouldn't be a perennial in a raised bed. So the other thing when you're planting your garden is you can use seeds. So you can buy like a seed pack, or you can use starter plants too, so that they've already the seed has been sown and has started to grow. So when you use seeds, it's more economical to do that, but it takes longer for your plants to start growing. In terms of the starter plants, that really does give you a jump start, and it's probably very important for things that you would want to grow that take a little bit longer, such as tomatoes and peppers or broccoli or something like that. And how you would know that is there is a wealth of information on the back of seed packets. And so most of them have days to maturity, or it says matures in, and it lists how many days. And so it's very easy, just from the day that you plant, this many days out is what it will be before your plant is mature and will start bearing fruit or vegetables. So the other thing you might want to look at that maturity date too, and you might want to do multiple plantings. So if you're going to plant beans and you would want beans throughout the season, you maybe should plant some this week, and then you're going to plant some more next week, and that will give you a continual harvest as we go along within the season. And then when you're laying out your beds, you just want to make sure that you think about the placement and things that you are going to maybe put multiple plantings in, or things that you would plant now and then plant again in the fall. So lettuce you would plant now. It doesn't do well in the heat of the summer, but you could plant it again come fall. You would maybe want to put those a little bit more up in the front or around the edges, so they're very easily accessible so that you can get to them. Now I just want to say one thing about tomatoes, and there are two types of tomatoes. There's determinate tomatoes and indeterminate tomatoes. And what those two words mean is how that tomato bears its fruit. So a determinate tomato bears its fruit all at one time. So that's something that would be really good if you were canning. You would want to pick a tomato variety that is a determinate. Otherwise, there's an indeterminate tomato, and they will, once they're mature, constantly bear fruit up until frost. So this is something that's very good for fresh eating, and you would constantly harvest. So knowing whether a tomato is a determinate or an indeterminate is very good to know, and where you would potentially place it in your garden as well, if you're going to harvest every single day or if you're going to harvest it all at one time. So then we also need to determine what the mature size of our plants will be. And so once again, all that information is on the back of the seed packet, or it's also on the tag within your starter plant. So on the seed packet, it says that the plant space for these particular bush beans are 4 inches, and your row space needs to be 24 inches between rows. So that's what you would do in a row garden. Now in a square foot garden, remember we grid off into 1 foot by 1 foot squares. And then depending on what you're going to plant, it's the number of seeds or plants that you would put in each square. So on Bachmans.com, my page got a little dirty and wet, sorry. We have a great care sheet that you can reference, and it gives a whole list of different vegetables and herbs and how many you would plant per square. So it's a really easy cheat sheet for you. And then there's also an example and a layout of a really good square foot garden on the bottom as well. So head to Bachmans.com for this. But some examples would be smaller things like radishes, carrots, or onions. You can put 16 of those little seedlings in each square. But then for a medium size one, you would go 9, and then so on and so on. And your tomatoes, which are extra large, and your peppers and broccoli, you just put 1 per square on those. So you and if you're doing it all from seed, your planting space is within the square foot is the distance between the plants, is how many would be to the thinning recommendation. But you can also just use the cheat sheet as well. So let's get planting, right? That's what everybody is waiting for anyways. And so when we do a raised bed, like I said, let's start with our bush beans. And so for a bean, we're going to plant 9 of these. And so you can see the seeds. You're going to put about 2 or 3 seeds in each little area. So because we're going to do 9, I'm going to do 3 rows. And you're going to kind of dig a little furrow in your soil. And again, if you look at the back of your seed pack, it says to plant your seed 1 inch deep. And most trowels have a great little measuring mark on them, so it's very easy to measure. So you just dig a little furrow there. I'm going to dig 3 of them. And then I'm going to take 2 seeds, kind of plant them, then go another little space and plant them, and then a third, and then just cover it up with some soil. And you can do that 2 more times, so you have 9 little individual ones there. In terms of your beets, and you're having a starter plant, when you take them out of the pack, you want to break them apart a little bit. And so you can see here's the individual plant. So this would be one little plant that you would plant for your beets. And then you can plant the next one. And so on and so forth. And if you're going to do a tomato would be just 1 tomato per square. The other thing you want to think about is anything that would have height on it. So if you're going to do some pole beans, you're going to do row gardening with pole beans, you would need some sort of trellis or bamboo structure for it to grow up on. And then again, remember, stagger those plantings. So, last night at home, my husband started planting some of them, and some of our garden, and did some beans and carrots, and then we'll go back next week and we'll plant another row of beans and carrots. So throughout the summer, we can continue to harvest instead of everything coming all at one time. It's just much more manageable, and then we can continually harvest and enjoy eating it as well. So once you get everything planted, a few things: make sure it gets very well watered, keep it well watered, especially remember if you're in a raised bed, they do take a bit more water than things in the ground. But even in your ground, if we haven't, if Mother Nature hasn't naturally given us some rain, you will have to water it. And then if you are planting in the ground, try not to walk on the soil. Leave enough space in between your rows. And so remember, we talked last week about putting down the line and a nice row, and then leave enough space that if you have to get in between, you can walk in between, and you're not walking on that growing soil. And then as your plants mature, continually harvest. And especially if you're going to grow some herbs, make sure you continually use and harvest those as well.
Susie, we have a couple questions.
Oh, great. We have some questions. Awesome.
Yes. So the first question is from Barbara, and she's wondering if you can give some examples of the determinate and indeterminate tomatoes.
Yes. So a tomato that would indeterminate tomato that would keep bearing fruit, those are a lot of your cherry tomatoes or your slicing tomatoes. And the ones that come all at one time, a lot of them are your paste tomatoes, ones that you would can for that.
And then Beth had a question. She said she has a lot of shade in her yard and is wondering how much sunshine a vegetable garden needs.
So Beth said she has a lot of shade in her garden and wants to know how much sun she needs. And so veggies and herbs, they need at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, which is considered full sun a day, so direct sunlight. So if you have a lot of shade in your yard, you might be better with a raised bed where you can move it to an area that you have more sun, because they really do need quite a bit of direct sunlight in order for it to be successful. So I also want give one more tip, and that is to be pretty diligent about recording what you plant. It's really fun to dig in and get right there, but make sure you label what you plant, and then also keep some good records of what you plant, when you planted them, what you planted in, and then what worked and what didn't work. And that'll be really helpful next year when you come back. You know what? This worked great, or this maybe didn't work. I need to plant it a week earlier, or I need to stagger my plantings more. So keeping those records and the notes from year to year really help you be more successful. And everybody always thinks in the moment, oh, I'll remember that next year. But oftentimes we don't. So it's okay. Just record it all down. Just jot down your notes. I think we have another question.
We do. We have a question from Judy, and she's growing spinach right now. She's wondering how to harvest and which leaves to pick first.
So Judy is growing spinach right now, which is a great early cool season crop. And so Judy, when you harvest, pick the bigger outer leaves first, leave the smaller immature leaves in the center, and let that continue to mature and grow out. Now spinach does like it cool, so when we get to some really, really warmer days, it just won't keep producing for you anymore, but you can go back and replant some of those spinach seeds once the temperatures cool down.
And then Leslie's wondering about fertilizing your vegetable garden.
So Leslie was wondering about fertilizing, and so there's a great product called Espoma Garden Tone. It is a granular organic based fertilizer, and once you get everything planted, you can sprinkle that on some of your veggies and your seeds, water it in really well, and it'll be a great fertilizer for you. So I hope you really enjoyed our Victory Garden segment today, learning how to plant. It's going to be beautiful weather this weekend, so let's everybody get in the garden and get our Victory Gardens going. And as we continue on, then we'll talk about maybe some flowers that you can insert into your Victory Garden as well, and have a beautiful cutting garden along with your vegetables. So it's great seeing it. Well, virtually, maybe. You can see me. I can't see you. But it was great being with you today. Get out, get digging in the dirt, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.